Hey, and good morning, everyone. This is Paul Semendinger along with the Philly sports guy, Pags, on the Mac and Jack Saturday debate show. It's the Mac, Jack, Doc, and Philly sports guy. And there's Jack. And there's Mac. And so we are all here, one big happy family to talk sports. How is everyone today?
I'm good. I want to start off congratulating you, Doc, on finishing the New York City Marathon last Sunday. Congrats. Great achievement. In honor of you, going through my files, I want to just exhibit something in honor of you, going through all my old memorabilia. The 1981 patch.
Oh, nice.
I ran the New York City Marathon from 1981, the patch. Okay, never made it onto my jacket, but I found it, so
That's very cool. Hey, by the way,
he's still
Jack,
on the clock though because he didn't finish.
Yeah. Jack predicted a 2:09:48 winner, and the winner was 2:08:41. So he was within a minute. That was a pretty good prediction. So when we talk too much marathon stuff, Mac starts to get antsy over there. He's like, we're boring. Nobody cares. And so, listen, it's a great sport. Go out there and run 26.2. You'll love it. But in the meantime, we have bigger things to talk about. And we're going to start with the sport of football and looking at the football giants, the New Jersey Giants, who are playing in New Jersey, but they are the New York Giants, of course, off to a great start, playing great football in a very competitive division with the Philadelphia Eagles. But the question presented to the distinguished panel this morning is, has Daniel Jones definitely established himself as the Giants franchise quarterback at this time? Take it away, man.
Well, let me just start at the beginning of this season, if you compare Daniel Jones to Jalen Hurts, as far as both guys being a franchise quarterback for their respective teams, I think it was neck and neck at the beginning of the season. We didn't know about Jalen Hurts, just like we didn't know for sure about Daniel Jones. But if anything, Daniel Jones maybe had a slight leg up on Jalen Hurts. But I'm going to tell you, we're well into the season. Eagles unbeaten. The Giants have exceeded expectations, being 6-2. But with Jalen Hurts, I think we can now safely say he's the Philadelphia Eagle franchise quarterback. Okay, going forward, that's going to be the plan. If I asked you who's going to be the Eagle quarterback 3-4 years from now, you wage on Jalen Hurts. In all likelihood, he's going to be the guy. We can't say that about Daniel Jones. The term "the jury is still out" applies to Daniel Jones right now. Let's see what he does the rest of the season. The only thing we could hope for, he gives us a definite answer. Either you make a big investment in him, if you don't, but if you invest in Daniel Jones, big money these next few years, it could turn out to be a mini disaster if you find out he's not the guy. So the answer basically right now is the jury's still out. But if I had to answer one way or the other, no. You bring him back on a shorter deal if you can, because no other team out there is going to offer Daniel Jones a multi-year deal at elite quarterback money.
Yeah, I do agree. I don't think Daniel Jones right now is a franchise quarterback. He's definitely a leader. He's definitely tough. I mean, you compared him to Jalen Hurts. Jalen Hurts has two of the best receivers in the league, and Daniel Jones has none. So, I mean, I don't think it's a fair comparison right now. I still think Daniel Jones is a very good quarterback. Is he a franchise quarterback? Probably not. But to me, as Jack said, we'll find out by the end of the year what the Giants think of him and whether he'll get that contract or not.
Sign him long term. I'd love for him to be the quarterback for as long as that Eli Manning was. So,
now wait a minute. I think Eli Manning won a couple of Super Bowls there, Pags.
Yeah, well, again, every dog's got his day every once in a while, and some dogs.
How many Super Bowls have the
Eagles? Some dogs
won?
get two. So it's like I'll give that to and not for nothing. Eli Manning was a good quarterback, but he just
I think he's a Hall of Fame quarterback. That could be a question another day.
Yeah, it is another day question, but I don't know that he is a Hall of Fame quarterback because rings are not the only statistic. But that being said, I mean, like literally, he won a Super Bowl that he wound up being the MVP for because of his defense. That had nothing to do with him, and that's fine, because you get the ring. However, you get the ring. His brother did the same thing. His brother won both Super Bowls by the defense, and really didn't have much to do with those rings. That being said, Daniel Jones, who is the person in question, I don't think he's a franchise quarterback. However, I'd love for the Giants to take him because he has the same problem that Eli does. He can't beat the Eagles.
Yeah, I agree with both of you and all three of you that Daniel Jones isn't a franchise quarterback. Now, help me out here a little bit. Isn't it true that this is the year that the Giants are going to have to make a big decision on Daniel Jones at the end of this
Yeah.
year?
Yeah.
So they
I
either have
don't know that they have to make that big decision. I think that they would be able to do they put the franchise tag on him for 1 year if they didn't want to make a full-time decision on him just yet. It would mean that they would have to pay a lot more in the next year in comparison, but I think that that would give them that little bit of extra time because obviously the Giants are surprised. I mean, I guess if you ask per a man, they're not surprised at where they're at. But if you look at it in general, they are surprised at where they're at, which means that they're not going to be in the mix for the quarterbacks that are in this draft. Now, I know that this is supposed to be a deep quarterback draft, but do you want to be a quarterback when you've had a season here just this past season and that year?
Well, the problem with the franchise tag, you put it on him for 1 year. Daniel Jones is making good money. You put it on him a second year, third year. If you keep putting a franchise tag on a guy, it costs the team a lot more money in the long run than signing him to any multi-year deal. That's what the problem is. And also, if they sign Daniel Jones to the franchise tag, they put the franchise tag on him, it doesn't show much confidence in your leader. You're just giving them 1 year deals and kind of moving them along. You only do that really with a veteran player who's not going to play long, not a young quarterback who's supposed to be the face of your franchise. You want to make a definite decision. You want to show a lot of confidence in him. It would be like a manager winning the World Series and you're offering him a 1 year deal. It just doesn't go, So they're going to have to address the Daniel Jones situation. But how much money would he take to give him? I mean, I can't imagine Daniel Jones being paid like one of the top 6 quarterbacks in the NFL. Like if Daniel Jones was willing to accept a multi-year deal and be paid like he's the 17th, 18th highest paid quarterback, maybe the Giants do it. Maybe they work along with him. But is he your guy?
Does that show the right confidence in your quarterback by doing that? Does that show the right confidence in your quarterback? I don't think that does. I think that that's not how you sign a quarterback. You have to sign a quarterback to one of the top 5 contracts. When you sign a quarterback for anything under that, you are already giving him the sign that, hey, you're not really our answer, but we're by doing by signing as the number 20th ranked quarterback, that's where we want to pay you. That's saying that you are, you're in the top 20, woo-hoo, but I think that doesn't do a quarterback really any justice either. I'd rather pay him for the 1 year and say, listen, hey, we're going to do this franchise tag for 1 year, and it's a show me year. Show it to me. You're going to get paid a lot of money for that, but after that,
guys, but it's supply and demand, okay? Let's say your guy Jalen Hurts became a free agent. Some of these quarterback needy teams would take a chance and give him a big contract, like the Falcons, the Saints. There'd be a few teams that would go after Jalen Hurts really hard and maybe even pay him like he's the 6th highest quarterback, let's say, in football. But they're not going to do that with Daniel Jones. Another team isn't going to go after him with the big dollars.
Well, listen, Daniel Jones, we all agree that he's not a franchise quarterback. But again, he is a leader. He can run with the ball. He makes big throws when he has to, and he's throwing to nobody, guys. The only real weapon he has on the field is Saquon Barkley. And listen, Daniel Jones probably will get a couple year, 3-year contract or so. They'll probably be at the minimum level, and we'll see what happens.
It's going to be an interesting debate, especially the further along the Giants go. I mean, nobody expected them to be 6-2 at this point anyway. And, the jury's been out on Daniel Jones his entire career. Is he the guy who's the answer long term? And again, as we're talking about, you can franchise him and do the year-to-year thing. But one of these days, the Giants are going to have to make a big decision on him. And imagine if they only lose 3 or 4 games this whole year and they go deep into the playoffs, and then you have to make a big decision. What do you do with him? I think it's a great question, because I don't think anybody feels he's elite. But as Jamie is saying, like, you almost have to pay him as he becomes as an elite quarterback if you want him to be the guy who's going to lead your team going forward.
Well, it's Daniel Jones's 4th year. He's not going to get that much better. I mean, we've basically seen him when he's been very good, and that's about his ceiling at this point. It's not like Zach Wilson on the Jets. For Zach Wilson, it's his 2nd year. Zach Wilson is still a work in progress. Okay, Daniel Jones, I mean, this is basically it. He's shown he could manage a game. He's shown he's tough. He's shown he has the potential to maybe be, and this is my opinion, guys, maybe another Jimmy Garoppolo. Maybe. Okay, if everything goes well, I could see him being maybe as good as Jimmy G. And would you say Jimmy G would be worth being paid one of the highest quarterbacks in the league? I don't think so. And he's not. Jimmy G had a 1-year deal with the 49ers this year, something like $18 million, which isn't heavy money for starting QB.
Well, he also took a pay cut to stay. So, and actually it wound up being a genius move by the 49ers in the grand scheme of things, because obviously their guy got hurt. But Jimmy G isn't the answer there either, is the problem. So it wound up working out for them, but it wasn't the best answer. I mean, he wound up getting the highest backup money that there's ever been paid to a backup, minus the guy being benched, you know what I mean? But short of that, he came in, he got signed as a backup for $18 million because he took a pay cut.
Yeah, and keep this in mind too. The elite quarterbacks in the league, the top guys, Lamar Jackson, Patrick Mahomes, Josh Allen, several others, they could have one really bad game and we're not phased. They put it behind us. They put it behind them, and our opinion of them isn't altered. But if Daniel Jones tomorrow, they're playing at home against the lowly Houston Texans, if the Giants are to lose that game, that's a mini disaster going forward for their hopes. And Daniel Jones is really bad against the Texans. Our opinion might get revised based on one game, but that's how shaky I think he is, the type of shaky ground. If he was truly elite, we wouldn't be fazed by one bad game. But I think with Daniel Jones at this point, it's, we're going game to game. Just the idea that we're debating this. I mean, he has 9 games to go. This is his 4th year in the league, and we're not certain what type of deal he should get. And the Giant front office probably isn't sure what to do with him. It's like a wait and see attitude. It's not like they want to lock him up long-term immediately. With Saquon Barkley, the only concern is the injury factor. If you eliminate that, the Giants are going to want to sign him at a snap of the finger and work out a deal. They're just concerned whether he could stay healthy. With Daniel Jones, it's not a question of staying healthy or not, like it would be with Lamar Jackson on the Ravens. It's whether Daniel Jones can actually perform at the high level.
Well, aren't the Giants 6-2? I mean, I looked at the standings. They're tied with the Cowboys. They're only 2 games behind the Eagles. And a lot of that has to do with Daniel Jones leading them, running with the ball, throwing the ball. As I said, for some big plays when he has to, with no receivers, guys.
Mac, let's look at the 3 years before that, what they've done with Daniel Jones. Let's look at his whole body of work. This year, you're right, the Giants have been one of the pleasant surprises in the league. Let's see that they keep it going, okay? Let's see, could the Giants finish 11-6?
I mean, let's even go back a little bit. Let's go back even on that. Do you attribute their 6-2 record to Daniel Jones? I don't think you do.
Part of it.
I think that you attribute their 6-2 record to their coaching staff, and that if you had a better quarterback, you may not even be. You may be better than 6-2. You might be 7-1 or 8-0.
Yeah.
So I mean, there's something to be said for that. I mean, I think that the 6-2 record, obviously, he has something to do with it because he's the quarterback. You know what I mean? And he is the quarterback of a team that's 6-2. So obviously, there's going to be a lot to be done with that. And the one weapon that he kind of had, they traded away. So, I mean, even the Giants themselves feel that they are not ready to make this full leap yet. That they're going to do whatever they can, and they're going to make it into the playoffs. And these guys are going to get playoff experience this year because unless they have a tremendous collapse, the NFL stinks in general, and I think that they're going to make the playoffs. I still think that it's possible that all 4 of the NFC East could make the playoffs. That being said, I think that Daniel Jones is right now. It's still show me. You know, I mean, let's see how we end this year. Let's see how you can run this offense, and then even after that, I think after you get into the playoffs, where things really matter, when you start playing real teams, or at least what are perceived as real teams. If you were to lose in the first round in the wild card round of the playoffs, you really have to consider whether he's the quarterback moving forward or not, especially since right now quarterbacks seem to be on a carousel. They seem to be switching teams easier than they ever have before.
Well,
and it doesn't always work out, but.
Well, couldn't you say the same thing of Jalen Hurts? They're still looking to see if he's really going to be the franchise quarterback or not. I mean, he's getting better as it goes on, but he's not. I don't think he's a franchise quarterback yet. I mean, you could say the same thing about him.
No, I can't. No, you can't say the same thing about him because I feel that 3 of these wins that we've gotten were solely on Jalen Hurts. And it has less to do with the coaching and more to do with the talent on the field that's winning some of these games.
Well, listen, it's still a team sport, Pags. I mean,
I understand that, but it's
a team sport, and if you're gonna not credit Daniel Jones for playing team ball, and you are going to credit Jalen Hurts for what you say that he's, with his weapons, I don't think that's fair.
Well, I'm saying that I'm giving more credit to your coaching staff at the Giants than I am giving it to the quarterback, where I'm giving more to the quarterback on the Eagles than I am to the coaching staff. And that's what I'm saying. So, yes, I am disagreeing with what you're saying, and it is fair because that's the way you got to look at these teams. I think that the Giants have primarily the same team as they did last year. In fact, their number 1 pick is hurt. Their offensive lineman is hurt. So, I mean, that's even affecting them a little bit. So, but you look at the team from last year with Judge, who stunk out loud, and now a team that's actually, that put the right leadership in place and is actually equated to wins on the field. They've won just as many games as they have for the last 3 seasons already in week 8 or week 9. There's something to be said for that, and that has to do more with the coaching than it does with the quarterback. Last year, we went to the playoffs. We grabbed a couple of extra weapons, and we are 8-0 now. That has more to do with the players on the field. It has more to do with the chemistry between quarterback and wide receiver than it does with the coaching. And that's a bigger deal, I think. I think that the coaches have put the Eagles in place to win all of these games. The preparation has been very key to that, and everybody's on the same page. Hey, listen, We're 8-0, but we ain't won anything yet. We have to continue to stay focused and go for the prize. Because if we want to win a championship, we can't take a day off. And
it becomes an interesting dilemma because the Giants, as everyone's noting here, are overperforming. And how much stock do you put in the fact that a team overperforms for a period of time, even if it's just one season? They had been terrible for years. And then do you say it's the coach? The coach turned the whole atmosphere around. Do you say it's the players? And then what do you do when you have to make these long-term decisions on some of these players? So it's going to be a fascinating thing that the Giants have to decide on as this goes forward. I mean, the best scenario for the Giants is they keep on winning, and then you have to make a tough decision regarding all this. Of course, if the Giants revert back to how they've played the last number of years, the decision might be made for you. So, hey, that was a good spirited debate here to start this whole thing off. So let's continue talking, and we're going to go to the idea of general sports. This could be any sport. And the idea is, which team in sports is the most overrated team of all? Which is the most overrated team in sports? What do you think?
I think currently, okay, that's what we're talking about currently. We're not talking about historically. Currently, I think the LA Lakers, they're always in the news. The Lakers this, the Lakers that. In all fairness to them, during the pandemic, they did win an NBA title. But I'm talking about the Lakers, and now they're not a playoff caliber team. Look, they lost to the lowly Sacramento Kings last night. They're just not good. But we constantly hear about the Lakers. The odds makers are, intrigued by the Lakers. And, I'm kind of tired of hearing about them. I'm tired of hearing about what LeBron has to say. It seems like he's talking more about social issues than he is about basketball. He's probably even fed up with his own team. Like he accepts it what it is. It's like he seems to be marking time until his son Bronny could get a spot on an NBA team, and he's going to leave the Lakers for that. Okay. And I'm just tired of all this talk with the LA Lakers. At this point, highly overrated team. They're not good at all. They're not going to make the playoffs. Let's talk about other teams except them.
Ian is saying the Astros. I noticed that he has a Philadelphia Phillies logo. I saw Pags laugh. I have a feeling that's more tongue in cheek. I think the Astros are definitely proving they're not overrated.
Well, I would make a mistake, Doc. Last week I said the Astros 4 World Series in 7 years. It's been 4 in 6 years. That marks them as a modern day dynasty.
Right. So that wouldn't make them overrated. Hey, what do you think about the Green Bay Packers being overrated? At least coming into the season, they've played pretty terribly. And, people still think that they're an elite team. They haven't been. Maybe we say that the Packers might be one of the most overrated teams. I thought it was a historical question when I saw it.
I think
I was going to go with the Cowboys. Go, Mac. I didn't hear you.
I agree with you. It's definitely the Dallas Cowboys. I mean, this team was once a great team, great coach, great players, but what they haven't been in the Super Bowl in a couple of decades now, and they still think, Cowboy fans still think that they have a great team there. Not that they're playing bad right now, but they're nowhere close to what they were. So the Dallas Cowboys, to me, guys, is the most overrated team in sports, historically and today.
Hey, I'll go before Jack starts to talk, because then I know I won't get a word in edgewise. I think in baseball it's the Mets. I think in football the Packers could be one of those teams that are this year specifically. But as I look at it, the Raiders, like every team that the Broncos are really more, that they were supposed to be great and they stink. And I saw that. I mean, I saw the writing on that wall. I think the Yankees even a little bit could be in that mix, as that they're showing a little bit of overrated, even though that they had 100-win season. It's just like they still have the same issues that they've had before. They couldn't get the Astros out of their head. And, Yeah, of course, it's easy for me to say as Mike went to the World Series. Had we played against the Mets in the championship series, would we have made it there? I don't believe that we would have. I thought we would have lost to the Mets in the championship series. That being the case, they didn't make it to the championship series because they couldn't even get out of the wild card round. So there's a lot to be said for what I think. Yeah. So when you say overrated, yeah, and the Lakers, absolutely the Lakers. They are so
Back,
ridiculous. They're just
back,
LA.
you're starting to sound like Jack now. You're starting to argue with yourself and bringing up all these different teams. Who's your most overrated team?
Oh, I was going per sport, but yeah, most overrated right now across the board, the Mets.
All right.
It's interesting you're saying the Mets because, I see them not as overrated yet because I don't think people are giving them a whole lot of credit yet. The Mets are an ascending team. There's going to be a question coming up a little later on about which team is going to be the most active in the winter. And we're not going to talk about it yet, but with the free agency, an argument could be made that it might be the Mets. We'll have that discussion in a little while. I don't see them as overrated. I wouldn't disagree that the Yankees, people always say that the Yankees are a team that's always in the World Series, and they've been to one World Series in 19 years. It's similar to the Cowboys, in fact, where you and the Lakers, but the Lakers have been better and champions more recently. But you have some of these all-time great franchises that are not doing as well as they had in the past. But I'm going to stick with the Cowboys because the Cowboys, every year, America's team, everybody says they're the greatest. And again, as Mac was saying, they haven't been to the Super Bowl in decades. So any last words on this one? What do you think?
You mentioned the Yankees. I think it's one World Series in the last 21 years. We've been to, the Yankees with the 2001 World Series. And since 2001,
they were in 2003, remember? They went in 2003.
2003. Sorry, you're 100% correct.
And 2009.
And they did win it in 2009.
I remember because I remember who lost it in 2009.
That was the Phillies.
The thing about the Yankees, it keeps getting thrown in our face how many championships they have over and over and over. And I'm even getting tired of it.
Listen, and this isn't a Yankee show. I made the point on my Yankee show, and I've written on my Yankee site that if the Yankees are going to be happy with reaching the playoffs and saying we're a 100-win team or a 95-win team, that's all we're going to do, and anything can happen in the playoffs, that's great. If that's going to be what you're going to say, that's fine. But then do me a favor and stop telling me how many World Series you won. I don't care. If you're winning World Series all the time, then market that. If your goal is to do whatever it takes to win the World Series, then market that. But if you're going to say, we're going to be a very good team, we're going to win 90 some odd games, and we're going to go to the playoffs every year, but we're not there to necessarily win the World Series, then stop telling me how many World Series you've won.
In all fairness,
how many World Series did they win in the 40s and 50s?
A ton.
Doc. Right.
I would have to list them out, but in the 1950s, they won the World Series in 50, 51, 52, 53, 56, and 58. So
that's seven right there, or six right there. So now
they were in a couple that they lost. They lost in 57 and they lost in 59
through 1953. It makes it hard in all sports to win a championship. The playoff system is out of whack now compared to what it was years ago. The one year the Yankees were stopped after winning 5 World Series in a row, in 1954, they won 103 games. That was more games than they won the years they were winning the World Series, but the Cleveland Indians won 111. Had there been a playoff system, maybe the Yankees win the World Series that year, just like they might not have won 5 in a row had a playoff system been in effect.
Correct. And I think
look at your Phillies. If this would have passed, they would have just been like a 4th place team or something in the National League, or 5th place or whatever, and we would have moved on. But the Phillies earned their keep getting to the World Series. Great job by the Phillies. Kudos to them. But the playoff system now throws things out of whack in all sports. You can't compare championship now to what was then. It was actually easier then because you go right to the championship series, and now you have all these hoops you got to go through.
On one end, it's easier. If you were the first place team, it's easier because you finished in first, you go to the World Series. But if you were the second place team, then it used to be you go home. So now it's at least they have a chance, or the third place team, or the sixth best team, or whatever, how many ever team they let in every year because they keep changing it. But the point is, I think the point is that yes, on a year-to-year basis, you could say this wasn't our year. The Dodgers won 1,000 games this year, and they didn't make the World Series. They were probably the best team. Okay, they didn't make it. That happens. Anything can happen in the playoffs. But when there's a decade of not making the World Series, you can't keep saying, well, it was just random chance we didn't make it this year. Just random chance we didn't make it this year. Next year we might. So, all right. So good stuff there. Most overrated team.
Yeah, but I just to do a little caveat on that real fast. I mean, going back to spring training, the Yankees were expected to be third in that division, were they not?
It depended on who you looked at, but Jack definitely didn't feel they were going to be
I thought they would definitely not make the playoffs. I thought they would go 80 and 82. That's what I predicted. I thought this was the start of a bit of a demise for the Yankees. And in the second half of the season, they were, I think, a game under 500.
Yeah, they were terrible.
The back end of it, they were what I thought they'd be, but they started the first half incredibly.
So, I mean, and that propelled them to get to the thing, and you could say, get to the playoffs, obviously, because they had such a big lead. I mean, I think at one point, but so did the Mets, and then the Mets couldn't keep it up. You know what I mean? And maybe that has more to do with the fact that the Braves played better and the Phillies played better, and they played a lot of the games against the Phillies very early in the season in comparison to the end of the season. So it was very lopsided where they had 13 games against the Phillies, and they had won 10 of those games. So
Pags, guys, I saw last night on HBO a documentary on Willie Mays, him currently talking. It was great stuff, but it was thought-provoking. I didn't Google this. Maybe I'm wrong. I might be right. I think there are only 2 players in baseball history who are in the Hall of Fame of one team and have had their number retired by the other team. One is Willie Mays, and the other is Keith Hernandez. Keith Hernandez, Cardinal Hall of Fame. He's in the Cardinal Hall of Fame and has had his number retired by the Mets. Willie Mays, I'm sure, is in the Giant Hall of Fame. He had his number retired by the Mets. As great as Willie Mays was, his number never should have been retired by the Mets.
Again, Mark McGwire on that list. Isn't his number retired for both the Cardinals and the A's?
I doubt it with Mark McGwire.
You know who had his number retired, which is weird, is Harold Baines. But is it only retired by one team? I'll find that out.
Right. I mean, 2 separate teams I'm talking about. Hall of Fame on one team, number retired by another team.
Interesting. Hey, Jack, why don't you take away with the hockey question so I don't butcher the guy's name because I don't follow hockey?
Yeah. Alex Ovechkin of the Washington Capitals, a player who's tormented the Philadelphia Flyers over the years. He's, I don't want to say closing in on one of the great records in sports, the most goals in hockey history. The last I saw, he was up at 788 career goals. Wayne Gretzky holds the record at 894 goals. The question is Ovechkin going to catch Wayne Gretzky? Okay, and my count is he's 788. He's 106 goals behind last I saw, and he's 37 years old, and 106 goals are a lot. And as you get older, goals, home runs, and power numbers become so much harder to come by, And the question is Ovechkin going to do it? And the feeling is from myself, yeah, he's going to do it. He's 37, because I think it's such a glorified record. He's going to hang around for as long as it takes. And he's still a top-of-the-line player. So even if he starts slowing down, he's going to be good. And I could see him lasting a few more years. Even if his performance isn't what you want it to be, once he's 25 goals down, the Washington Capitals are going to want him there. It's kind of like, in a sense, you have a legendary player on any other team. You want him to break the record for your team. You're going to keep him going. It's only a question of whether or not it's a liability. Because I remember when Cal Ripken was going for the consecutive game streak. I forgot who the manager was at the Orioles at the time, but he felt Ripken really needed an off day now and then because his performance, is maybe lagging a little bit at times. But how do you sit a guy down going for a record? But Ovechkin is going to get the record. I have to feel 106 goals, or a lot of goals still. 37 years old. He could play till he's 41, 42 and clear it, and maybe even clear it by the time he's 40.
He could possibly. If you go back the number of years, starting with 2017-18, here's his goal totals for each year: 49, 51, 48. Then he had only 24, and then 50, and he has 8 already this year. So as a guy who doesn't really follow hockey, I'm just looking at 100 goals. It looks like for basically every 2-year period, for the most part, he's scored right around 100 goals, which puts him right in the ballpark within a year and a half or 2 years from now. So I think absolutely, number-wise, it looks like it's a slam dunk.
And probably being one of the more knowledgeable on hockey when it comes to these, between the four of us, I've got the most knowledge here. Absolutely, he's going to break that record. Short of an injury, players right now can play because of the way hockey is, they can play till about 42, 43 years old and still be productive. Jaromir Jagr played till like he was 44 and actually still plays professional hockey in the Czech league. So it's like there's a lot of hockey left in him, and he's still scoring 40 goals a year. I mean, he's got a goal every 2 games. So, and that's his team around him is still productive. He's got the guys that are going to feed him, and his shot is amazing still. So, and when he said that he's tormented the Flyers, actually the Flyers have really been good about keeping him in check for the most part throughout his career. He hasn't killed us the way he's had good games against us. Don't get me wrong, but he hasn't killed us the way that he could have. And he's gotten us some seasons, and he hasn't gotten us in other seasons. But I think when it comes to catching the great one, he's going to do it.
Well, I think, and I'm glad you corrected that, because the question is, will he break, the record? Listen, I think records that we spoke about before, you have to think about the errors and how the game has changed, right? I mean, scoring goals way back when were a little bit tougher because it was more defensive. There was more checking. It was a harder brand of hockey. And then when you got to Gretzky, he had goons that actually protected him. They kept the players off of him so that he could skate free all over the place, as opposed to Gordie Howe, who basically was the enforcer. Not only did he score goals, but he protected the players too. So I think you have to look at the time and the era, and you can't think about records, overall, when there's the different styles and the different type of game that was played way back then as opposed to today.
Well, good. Pags, let me throw this question at you. Let me revise the question. Okay, it looks like he's certainly going to get to the 894, stays healthy. We'd be kind of surprised if he wouldn't, especially Doc going over his goal totals. Can he get to 1,000 goals? 1,000. He has 788 right now. Does he have 212 goals in him, meaning he's going to need a really solid 5 years, or at least hang around maybe 3-4 years and, chip away at it at the end?
I'll be honest. I think he gets really close, but I don't think he hits the 1,000 mark. I mean, unless he has like a very serious run in terms of where he's able to score like 60 goals this year because he has a run of 20 games where he scores like 25 goals. And he's had those runs before. He has had crazy production runs. But I don't foresee the 1,000 goals. It's just, I think that he would have to be there way too long. I think he would have to go into his 5th year to do it. And I think when you talk about somebody who's 42 years old, you start to have a little bit of a decline. I mean, it's like, so, and when I say a little bit of a decline, we're going to go from 40 goals to like 30 goals or maybe like 27 goals. And that's still a great production in the NHL right now. But I don't think he's going to be able to sustain the longevity of 40 plus goal seasons for 5 years to be able to hit that mark. Just my opinion. He might. He's got the closest chance to it, but I don't think he's going to make it.
You bring up an interesting point. It makes me think of Pete Rose, who's in the news because he's now asking Major League Baseball to reconsider his Hall of Fame candidacy and unsuspend him, which would be a great debate topic, not for today because we have all our topics, but baseball is, as all the sports are now, hand in hand with all these gambling apps and stuff. And Pete Rose, obviously that was his big problem, was gambling. It's more complicated than that. But anyway, in order to become baseball's all-time hit king, this is a guy who used to get 200 hits a year. And, at the end of his career, he had 121, 107, 72, 35, 107, and 52. His batting average was lousy most of those years. And the question is, like, if you're the hockey player or the baseball player or the football player and you're chasing a stat, how long do you stick around to get that stat? Is it worth having miserable seasons for teams that are not even in contention so that you can be the number one person of all time on a given list? Or is it better to say, you know what, I was great and I bowed out while still being very good and I came close? What do you think on that? What's better, to hang around to get the number, but in order to get that number, you're going to be a shell of who you were? Or does it make more sense to stop when you realize your production isn't at that elite level anymore?
Sounds like a song. Better to burn out than to fade away.
Guys, I also think if you're popular with other players, they want you to get the record. They look out for you. I mentioned Cal Ripken before. When Cal Ripken was close to the record during the offseason, there was talk about a player strike and there being substitute players brought in, meaning Cal Ripken, if he went on strike, they would count as major league games and he wouldn't get the record. He'd come a little short. The players' union wanted to pass something to allow him to play. Ripken said, no, he's going to honor the picket line. He's not going to cross it. Even if the players' union encouraged him to do it, made a special case for him, okay? But that showed his level of popularity. If you're a player and you're not performing and you're just hanging around for the record, you're not happy. You're not happy because you're just there for your own individual thing. You don't know how you wake up in the morning thinking. You could love your job one day, and then the next day you could start thinking, I'm not as enthusiastic about this as before. That's how Derek Jeter kind of quit finally. All of a sudden he gets up and he said, this has become a chore to me. It's no longer joy, going to the ballpark. It happens. I remember David Cohn saying he took the subway into work, I think with the Mets at the end of his career. And the joy of being a big leaguer just wasn't the same as before. The enthusiasm level, you never know. I mean, listen, Mac hasn't worn me down yet where I don't want to do this show, but it might get to me one day. I might figure I'm on the mood to do this. You never know.
Right. But if you're close to the all-time record on the Mac and Jack show list, would you stick around just to set the record, being even a shell of your former self?
Well, that's what I may be doing now. How many do we have in a row, Mac? I don't know.
I don't know. It's a couple years worth. But I definitely would get rid of Jack if he started,
Listen,
not being well. I mean, I got plenty of co-hosts to pick from out there.
Guys hang around. The great Mickey Mantle the last few years of his career. The great Willie Mays, who I mentioned, wasn't the same. I mean, guys aren't the same at the end, but it depends how long you're going to push it out.
Right. But I think the difference between Mays and Mantle is they didn't necessarily stick around to get goals. They weren't looking at specific numbers. So that's the question. Like, do you stick around if Ovechkin, is that how you say his name?
Ovechkin.
If he's sticking around to get 1,000, as you were proposing the question, like, would there be a last place hockey team willing to have him play and just go out there and keep trying because it doesn't really matter to get to the 1,000? Like, is that worth it?
The difference is that he's still productive. He's
no.
still a productive player, and
he's going to set the record. That's the question. Then was to follow up to get to 1,000, and the idea was, well, he's going to take 5 or 6 years to get there, maybe 7. And at what point do you make the decision as a player, like, yeah, this just isn't worth it? I'm going to get 1,000 goals, but I'm a lousy player right now, so I'm a lousy player with 1,000 goals.
Doc, when you're not producing, you could be close. I'm going to give you an example of a Yankee, Tommy John. I think he had 289 wins over his
I think it was 288. Yep.
288. Okay. He badly wanted to get to 300 because that was the magic number. Had he gotten to 300, Tommy John is probably in the Hall of Fame.
No doubt.
Probably. Right. But now he's not in the Hall of Fame and might never be.
No,
but his name will live on forever because it's his surgery.
Right, and that might get him in the Hall of Fame. The surgery over the 288 wins, ironically, hand in hand. But he's getting close, and he badly wants to get there, but he just wasn't quite producing. And sometimes you have to pack it up. It could be with Ovechkin. He could have 989 goals at the end of one season, and then the team might think to bring him back for 11 goals. He's kind of hurting us on the ice. But the Capitals
would have to happen. That would have to happen in like year 5.
Yes, that's what I mean.
He's had only he was like injury ridden, and he had like only 18 goals out of playing like 60 games. The good thing about hockey players is that like hockey players, even over the age of 40, continue to play hockey. They stay that active, and if you're a hockey player, you never stop playing hockey. Like, so even if he's retired 60 plus years old, still play hockey. So, and that's a little different. Like baseball players, football players specifically, once they retire, there's not much playing football anymore. They're not even playing rough touch games. And then you have baseball players. It's like once you can't catch up with the fastball, you're done playing. That's the end of that. You move to slow pitch softball. And so, but hockey players continue to play hockey, and it's, the shifts become a lot shorter when you get older, but ultimately you're still on the ice and you're still doing it. And I think that that's a little bit of the difference there. So would a team bring him back? We did it with Jágr. Teams were clamoring for him. And he spent like a parade of teams. He had like 7 or 8 teams that he played for, where it was just one year contracts. He would just float from team to team, and he still was so good that you didn't care that he was only scoring like 12 goals in a season, because he was still such a good player and mesmerizing on the ice. And that's where I think that Ovechkin could, if he would come back, if he was 11 goals short, and he's not going to play for another team, he's going to finish with Washington, he would come back.
Well, great stuff. Hey, you know what? We're right about at the time for our first commercial break. We're going to have lots more talk when we come back on the other side. So, hey, everybody stretch your legs or pay attention to some great commercials. We'll start off with Team AmVets. Here we go. Take a break.
Supporting the needs of our veterans. That's the goal of all of us at Team AmVets. Like Mitch, Carlos, and Kevin from our Welcome Home team that brings furniture to our vets.
We are Team AmVets.
Or Linda from our thrift stores who brings you great bargains every day.
I am Team AmVets.
And John, who picks up your thrift store donations that support California veterans programs.
I am Team AmVets.
Visit our website or a Team AmVets thrift store to donate or shop today.
Join the team!
see right now, without LeBron, Lakers are struggling.
Let me tell you about a team I hate, all right? I know the Dallas Cowboy fan is here, so I had to make sure he knew how much I hate this team.
I'm ready.
I've often said that the people who run baseball, they try very hard to ruin it.
I'm from Brooklyn. I don't have a problem saying it to his face. Oh, I'm from Brooklyn. Hey, guys, any?
Trisha's having a sleepover tonight. Can I go?
I wonder about Lucy's friends. What should I say? I know you're only 10, but one of these days a friend will offer you a drink. And alcohol at your age can lead to so many things. None of them good.
So can I go to the sleepover?
Lucy, I want you to promise me
I
something.
finished my homework.
Bigger promise. If there's any drinking, I want you to say, "No thanks, not my thing."
Mom.
I promise you, your real friends won't care. Deal?
Sure.
Really?
I promise, Mom.
They really do hear you.
Did you pack your toothbrush?
For tips on how to start the talk, visit underagedrinking.samhsa.gov. A public service message from the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration.
This is a presentation of Northeast Streaming Sports.
Anyone else?
My name is David, and in 8 years, I'll be an alcoholic.
Hi, David.
I'll start drinking in middle school, just at parties. But my parents won't start talking to me about it till high school. And by then, I'll already be in some trouble.
Kids who drink before age 15 are 5 times more likely to have alcohol problems when they're adults.
The thing is, my parents won't even see it coming.
So start talking.
Who's next?
Before they start drinking.
Mr. Green? Mr. Green?
Yeah.
You need any help?
Mm-mm.
I just want you to know, I think you're the best ever.
Yeah, sure.
Want my Coke? It's okay, you can have it.
No.
Really, you can have it.
Okay.
A Coke and a smile makes me feel good. Makes me feel nice.
Be around.
That's the way it should be. I like to see
Hey, kid.
the whole world smiling with me. Coca-Cola as life. Have a Coke and
Thanks, Mean Joe.
smile.
My baloney has a first name. It's O-S-C-A-R. My baloney has a second name. It's M-A-Y-E-R. Oh, I love to eat it every day. And if you ask me why, I'll say, 'cause Oscar Mayer has a way with B-O-L-O-G-N-A.
Oscar Mayer, the first name in Bologna.
How's that?
You know, that was pretty good. It's a song that's now going to be in my head for the rest of the day. We are back here on the dock, and Jack and Pags Saturday morning debate show. Mac is coming back in about 2.5 seconds, and there he is. So we got the whole team. We're all assembled. Here we go. We have another hour. I just dropped my Gatorade. Thank goodness the lid was on it. So we have another hour of good debate to go. And so let's go back to a Yankee question. This always gets Pags a little upset when we focus on the Yankees. But here's the question. Would you feel comfortable if Derek Jeter replaced Brian Cashman as the general manager of the Yankees? And I guess I'll go first.
Before you answer this question, can I
okay.
ask, because I haven't, it's been so great not hearing about Yankee stuff. Was it a surprise for you guys? And what are your thoughts about him being fired?
Who?
Cashman.
What?
What?
Wasn't Cashman fired?
No, what are you talking about, Pax?
No, I don't think so.
I had heard that he was fired. I came
No, he
across the
wasn't
wire that
fired.
he was let go.
Not that
So I guess that was wrong. I heard that wrong.
When did you
Just shows
hear
you how
this?
much I've been paying attention to baseball
When
after the
did
World
you
Series.
hear
I heard
this?
he got
You
fired.
know, between you and Mac, I'm exasperated. Mac, I think, said a week ago the Mets signed DeGrom.
Right.
They didn't sign DeGrom, and the Yankees didn't fire Cashman. What are you guys talking about? Okay, come on.
We've heard some crazy things the last couple of weeks. We heard that the Phillies were in the World Series. We heard that. Oh wait, they really were. Sorry. All right. So, so the question really is: would you feel comfortable if Derek Jeter replaced Brian Cashman? And I'll go first, and then I'll take a step out for a moment myself. I think Brian Cashman did a very good job as the Yankee general manager. He's been the general manager for a long time. But as we were saying earlier, if the idea of the Yankees is to win World Series, they haven't been doing that. So, and I also believe that over time, and I think our country's founded on this principle, president can only be president for 8 years, right? Like the idea is over time, leadership needs to change. And so Brian Cashman's been the Yankee GM for over 20 years. It's probably time for him to go. Would I feel comfortable with Derek Jeter being in that role? I think that's the fun idea. Like people like, oh, Jeter would be great. I don't know that he's a great GM. I don't think there's a body of work to really say to that he would be a great GM for a team like the Yankees. I would rather see them bring Jeter in as a assistant GM. You know, let's see how he can do in that type of role. But I don't want to just give the job to him. I don't think that's any different than giving the job to, in a sense, Aaron Boone and saying, here, you never managed before. Let's see if you can manage. So there's my thing. I'll step out for a moment and we'll hear you guys debate.
Okay. I mean, go ahead, Matt.
I'll go first. I think it'd be a great idea for Derek Jeter to be GM of the Yankees. He was a great player. Of course, he's in the Hall of Fame. He does have GM experience with the the Marlins, and he knows he has the right personality for New York. He's not going to get all befuddled by bad press. So with all that together, I can't see why Derek Jeter wouldn't be a great GM.
I mean, I wouldn't like the idea. I mean, James Click, the Houston Astro GM, was just let go because he didn't get along with the owner and hadn't been getting along for a while. But he did a heck of a job as the Astro GM. With that said, I'm happy with Brian Cashman in the position. I mean, because he's put the Yankees in position to win year after year after year. They've been making the playoffs. They haven't taken the next step to get to the World Series. But at least the Yankees have always in the mix. Cashman always makes those moves. But this is about Derek Jeter. His body of works with the Miami Marlins. And it was basically getting young talent. And the Marlins did make the playoffs in the abbreviated season during the pandemic. They won a playoff series against the Cubs. But outside of that, we don't know the moves that Jeter made, whether they're paying any dividends or not. We just don't know. He got rid of Giancarlo Stanton's contract, which would have been really bad for the Marlins. So kudos to him for getting rid of that contract. The Yankees picked it up. The Yankees can afford to pay it. And Stanton has been okay with the Yankees. Good. Is he worth the money? It's questionable at this point. But the jury's still out on the Stanton contract that the Yankees picked up. Not until he's a former Yankee can we fully evaluate that. But, you know, Jeter's personality's not cut out to be the Yankee GM. Jeter's very businesslike, quiet, very official. Excuse me, Matt? In this market, Jeter just wouldn't really.
You like same thing when he wasn't outspoken.
What did outspoken? What are you saying, Mac? I
said Eli wasn't outspoken either. He was very humble. I think Derek Jeter is very humble. He gave credit to the team instead of him taking the limelight. And I think anyone could manage the Yankees, Jack. Anyone could be GM of the Yankees. I mean, they got a great team.
GM.
Yeah,
we're talking about GM. Wouldn't be a good fit as Yankee GM. He doesn't take criticism well, and it just wouldn't be a good fit. I just don't see it. Maybe as an assistant GM in some capacity. Also, Jeter at this stage of his life has already said he's putting family, full-time family guy. And to be a GM of the Yankees, it's going to take you away from that a good share, at a time. And I don't think Jeter's ready to make the commitment. Also, his family's in Florida. That means he'd have to move to New York. And I'm sure Jeter will want it to be done remotely. Live in Florida, but fly into New York, back and forth. And I don't think that works because I think you have to live in the city basically year-round that you're a GM of.
Pax, what do you think? I know you're going to agree with me, Pax. What do you think about Jeter possibly being GM for the Yankees?
I'll be honest. I think that he would need to hone his skills more. I mean, obviously, he did it for the Marlins for a little bit. I think that, I think if you become the GM of the team that you played for, there's unreal expectations that are automatically thrown on you because of the way you played. You assume that you're going after players that fit your caliber of play. And I think that that's an unrealistic expectation to put on anybody going in. So it's interesting because the general manager of the Astros was fired. And, when I think about who built that team for real, it was Ed Wade. Ed Wade built the team, but Ed Wade's not a guy who gets you over the hump. He builds the team up so that you get all of this talent in your system, and then you need another GM to bring it up out of that system. So this team that is going on this dynasty right now is still the team that Ed Wade built, and it took time to build it. I think that if you bring in Derek Jeter as the GM of the Yankees, you start to run into, you think of Jeter as a champion. So you expect that his GM style would be championship-esque. And I think that that's an unrealistic expectation to a guy who's never done it before. And that's where I kind of see. I don't necessarily think he'd be a great fit for there. But Now the Orioles have taken a big jump, but I'm going to use them as the example. Would I think it'd be better for him to be the Orioles GM, or even maybe the White Sox GM, where he's in? I don't think the limelight's the big deal. I think it's just the ability to be able to do the job properly, and it's a job he's never really done before. Even with his 2 years in Florida, I don't really think that that's enough body of work to be able to say, okay, you now are going to get the highest profile baseball job, GM job that there is out there, running the team that you played for, the New York Yankees, and we want World Series. And I think that that's too much expectation on one guy who's not on the field.
Hey,
my
Doc.
opinion.
Doc, real quick. You said that, Cashman probably should move on because he's been there so long. And just to change, with the team, how the team's run, who would you choose for a manager of the Yankees?
The general manager? I think that would be a great question. The guy that's the great pick would be Theo Epstein, right? If I don't think he's interested in taking the job. I don't know that, but I've never heard that he is interested. But that would be a great guy to bring in. I think the question is something that I really haven't thought deeply about because of the fact that the Yankees just seem to keep bringing Brian Cashman back all the time. So do I have a replacement in mind? I don't. But I think, again, it comes down to this idea that the Yankees have been in one World Series since 2004. And, Brian Cashman's an excellent general manager. But at the same time, he hasn't been able to get them to the promised land most often for a very long period of time. And so obviously whatever approach he's using, and whether that's him or whether that's Hal Steinbrenner not being willing to get some of the necessary talent around the players that are there now because they don't want to spend over a certain amount and the luxury tax is really serving as a cap. Those are all questions you could ask. Is it Cashman's fault that they're not reaching the World Series? Is it Hal Steinbrenner's fault? Is it some other fault? Who knows? But I do think it's time for the Yankees to infuse some new thinking and a new approach in the organization.
When was the last time they didn't make the playoffs?
2016.
Jeter's last year.
What's that?
Jeter's last year. They didn't make the playoffs.
You know, people say the Yankees, the fans won't accept a period of time of them rebuilding, but we did. The Yankees in 13 and 14 didn't make the playoffs. In 15, they went in. They played one game against the Astros and lost, and then they didn't make it in 16. So that was a 4-year period where they had one playoff game and they lost. You know, the idea at that time, too, was Brian Cashman at that time was saying, I have a 5-year plan, and we're going to get the Yankees back to where they need to be, meaning the World Series. Just bear with me here. And that 5-year plan included guys like Clint Frazier, Miguel Andujar, Gary Sanchez, included Aaron Judge, of course. But his 5-year plan didn't get them to the World Series. And that's another indictment to say, like, we did listen to you. We gave you the shot, and you had a vision. And as part of that vision, you hired a manager who's never managed before or coached anywhere. And as a guy who hasn't been able to match up wits against the better managers, especially in the playoffs. So it's not like he didn't do a great job as the general manager. But
Yankees won the Final Four, Doc. Final Four.
All right. Okay. And the year before they weren't. I mean, again, I'm not talking year to year. I'm talking the 18 out of 19 years. At some point, you have to say it's not just fluke that they're not making it to the World Series. The approach somewhere has to be wrong, right?
To a certain extent, I think.
Yeah.
It's a result-oriented business, and the results aren't there, period.
That I would agree with. And that's that alone. That alone, you know, if you're going to base it off of that, but there's a thought process in the Eagles organization that if you continually make the playoffs, eventually you're going to win the chip. And that, you know, that again, it's a matter of catching lightning in the bottle. And then you want to be able to go forward and do that. That was similar to the way the Atlanta Braves did it in the 90s. That's just, let's continually make the playoffs. Let's win the division, and let's catch a little bit of lightning, and let's see if we can get a World Series. They went 13 times to the playoffs and made it to won one World Series. So it's like there's a lot to be said for stuff like that, but also you got to be able to get them over the hump. And I think that's the problem here. I think that you need the different face to get over the hump, because the hump just is too insurmountable for Cashman for whatever reason that is.
Yeah, great points.
Yeah.
All right. So I love when I go on a long-winded discussion and then everybody just says, I agree. I'm going to bring you guys around with me wherever I go, so that when I have these discussions, maybe with my family and things like that, everybody just says, yeah, I agree.
Wait till my book comes out so that we both could be signing.
Just for the record, I haven't forgiven you and Mac from the beginning of the year, Doc, for the Judge contract situation.
Oh my God!
Views on it. I've never forgiven.
All right, so you know we could have that discussion about Aaron Judge and his contract. I think what the Yankees offered was very, very fair at the time, and I do think whoever signs him is going to regret at least the last half of that contract. And I'm not saying the Yankees shouldn't re-sign him. He's a Yankee legend, and we could talk about all that. And he sells jerseys, and he's got the judges' chambers and all that. But I don't think it's going to be a contract that people are going to be thrilled that in 7 years he's earning $40-some-odd million a year. And again, and I've said this before, nobody in 2028, when Aaron Judge strikes out in a playoff game and the Yankees lose, or he strikes out in September, costing the Yankees a chance at the playoffs, nobody in 2027 is going to say, the Yankees just lost a big game. But I'm so happy that 5 years ago, Aaron Judge hit 62 home runs. So it's all good, and walk out of the stadium happy. No one will.
They wouldn't have had to pay him $40 million had they upped the offer in the beginning of the year in spring training. They wouldn't have had to pay him even $30 million had they signed him 3 years ago long-term, had a vision the way the Atlanta Braves have a vision with their young players.
Oh, I won't disagree with that.
They could have gotten him for $25 million, for 10 years when he was 27 years old. Kind of what San Diego did with Tatis, Atlanta, Acuna, whatever.
He would end up renegotiating that contract anyway.
He can't renegotiate contract.
He could listen. If he was only getting $20 million a year, like you say, and there's no doubt that an agent or whatever or another team would have been making offers or something like that, and he would have the Yankees would end up paying him more. There's no doubt about that.
That they could have voluntarily extended him a little more. But no, they don't renegotiate. In baseball, they don't have forced renegotiations anymore. That's that. A player signs, he's got to live with the deal. I mean, when was the last time you heard a player forcing a trade in baseball because he wasn't happy with his contract? I mean, I can't think of one off the top of my head.
No, just football.
You do make a great point there, Jack, about the Yankees, had they done it and been a little bit more proactive. But again, the problem with Judge, there's really two problems in regard to his contract and his status. Was number one, he came up, had a big year, and then he was injured primarily a lot for a number of years. And he came up. See, a lot of these guys come up when they're 22, 23. He came up when he was like 26, 25 or 26. So he was already old by the time he got called up to the major leagues. And he was, relatively speaking. So that's why now he's a free agent, but he's a relatively old free agent. He's already 30. He's going to be 31 next year. So, so the question is, I can understand a team not saying when hasn't even proven himself yet, well, we're not going to give you a 10-year deal when you're 25. You're not even in the major leagues yet.
No, not a 10-year deal. I hate 10-year deals. I agree with you.
But that's all these other guys, Tatis and Acuna. These guys all have these big 10-year deals.
I said it before the season. Judge is not injury prone. I don't want the stats. He got hit in the hand by a pitch one year that forced him to miss a lot of games. That's not being injury prone. He proved his durability this season. Switching
and last
playing. Yeah, he proved his durability. I'm just saying, this
is turning into a Yankee show again, and Pags looks totally bored.
So, well, no, I actually I want to throw an audible in the question here.
Okay,
my audible is, how much money is it worth it to remove years from the contract? So, in essence, you're talking about paying him $45 million a year for 9 years. Is it worth it to pay him $52 million a year for 5 years? $260 million contract for 5 years. How does any player now, and I agree with you, in 5 years' time, when he strikes out and it costs the Yankees the game or do whatever, in 5 years, they could care less that he hit 62 home runs. But they would be happy that his contract is coming off of the payroll. Now, $52 million is
I wouldn't give that's too much, Pags. $52 million.
Yeah, but I'm saying, but you're paying for not the longevity of things. That's what it is. How much money is it worth it to take years off of the back end of the contract?
It's a great question.
That's the question.
Lincoln Mitchell, who writes for Start Spreading the News, proposed this when Harper was a free agent, actually, a number of years ago. He said, instead of doing a 10-year deal for $300 million, do a shorter deal, and instead of giving him $25 million, give him $50 million for like 5 years or 4 years. We'll get his best years, but we'll still pay the same amount of money, but we'll be done with the contract. nobody's really done that yet. I think that's the next big thing we're going to see in baseball contracts is you just front load the whole darn thing. Judge, you want 30 million? All right, we'll give you 50 million for 6 years. There's your or 300 million. There's your 300 million. But we don't want to be tied up to you for 10 years. And will a team, it's sort of like the Mets did with Scherzer, right? We're going to give you 40 some odd million for 3 years because we want you that bad. The question, but we don't want to be stuck with you for a long time. So the question is, how reasonable is that? And would a player take it? So great question.
I think that when you start dealing with numbers like that, when you start paying somebody in excess of $50 million a year, the Players Association is put themselves into a unique type of situation where it's more longevity. They're trying to get the longevity out of the players. They want these long contracts. But ultimately, you need to have the blip that says, okay, we're going to give you 50 some million dollars for the shorter term, as they did with Scherzer, where he's getting paid $47 million, because ultimately, or 43, that number starts to elongate. So at that point, you gave him $43 million for 3 years. I want $45 million for 5 years. I want the $50 million for 10 years because I'm worth it. And it's ultimately, it starts the process of the higher annual value, annual value increasing for longer periods of time. So I think that Judge specifically and DeGrom, both of those guys, in that situation where they're going to get paid ridiculous amounts of money in a short time span. And what that's going to do is that over the next 5 years, you're going to see that elongate into that high of a annual value going to 7 and 10 and 15 years moving forward.
Can you all see them paying for performance, base hits, home runs, stolen bases, pitchers' wins or strikeouts? Can you all see any of that maybe happening?
I don't see that happening.
No, and the reason why you don't see that happening is because, so you talked about just stolen bases in general. How many times is a guy going to get caught stealing a base because he's trying to make money rather than really care about his team? And that's what it starts to produce. When you start, instead of taking the walk, you want to get on base with a hit. So you start swinging at bad pitches and doing those types of things. I think that that type of contract doesn't work. It's more about the eye than the team itself. So you don't ever want to have a contract.
And it puts the team in a bad spot too. Are you injured or not injured? Do we DL him or put him on the injured reserve list or not? He wants to play because he thinks he can play, but we don't think he can play. But if we sit him down, he doesn't get those numbers. Or a manager comes in and you don't necessarily see eye to eye with the manager. So the manager says, oh, by the way, you're not playing tomorrow. Yeah, but if I get 2 hits tomorrow, I get more money. Well, that's your problem.
Yeah.
Right. It becomes cancerous.
Well, isn't that going on with Matt Ryan in football, the Indianapolis Colts quarterback? They're sitting him down, didn't you say, Pags? Because the Colts would have to pay him more money if they played him because he meets certain incentives. So they're not playing him, and they're playing Sam Ellinger, 7th round draft choice, a non-prospect,
Right. And if he gets hurt, then they're going to go right to Nick Foles. So like Ryan went from starting quarterback to 3rd string quarterback, and that's, all because of money. Now, are such a mess of a franchise. Like, they're just such a mess of a franchise. And it's, that's becoming very apparent, but I don't know. It's like, it's all ridiculous, but I think that in baseball, more than any other sport, these contracts going that high isn't going to be unrealistic. And I think that, again, is $5 million a year for shorter terms worth it? Because these guys are.
You mentioned a great point, but it's about timing. My beef with the Yankees isn't Judge right now. I might not sign him right now. I definitely wouldn't give him a 10-year deal. I definitely wouldn't give him $45 million a year. You know, I'd go as high as 40, maybe for 8 years, $320 million. But my argument with the Yankees was they had, as late as last spring training, they should have finally treated him as if he was a free agent when he was 1 year away from free agency. Give him a free agent offer. Had they given him the offer last spring that they're going to be giving him right now, he would have signed for that. But they didn't do it. They continued to play it out. And guess what? He's a free agent. I think he wants to sign with the Yankees. I really do. But sometimes you want to go back to a team. But if someone else comes in like the Giants and they offer him $80 million more, he's likely not turning that down. You know, as much as he hates to leave the Yankees, he's going to say, how can I turn this offer down?
All right, let me change the subject here just a little bit. It becomes more of a philosophical question here. Everybody gives Aaron Judge a whole lot of credit because he turned the Yankees down and he put his money where his mouth is and he played for a new contract. And look how great he did because he wanted to show the Yankees. So is he going to be that good next year when he already has that contract and he has nothing left to prove? Or if he had signed the contract, let's say the Yankees offered him $37 million before the season, as Jack wanted them to do, would he have been that great this year? Or was he that great? Because this is what they keep saying. He was so great because he was showing them and he put his money where his mouth is. Okay, he put it all on the line. So will he still be that good when he doesn't have to put it on the line? It's just a question. What do you think?
Let's compare him to Roger Maris. Let's say Roger Maris was a free agent after the 1961 season when he broke Ruth's record. The next season, Maris went from 61 to 33 homers, which was good at that time, 33 homers. If you prorate it, it's a little over 40 today. And he made a phenomenal defensive play, you know, in the 62 World Series, Game 7, cutting the ball off, hitting the cutoff man to keep, you know, the tying run from scoring. Yeah, Judge is an outstanding defensive player, outstanding. He's not going to hit 62 homers again in all probability. He doesn't have to. If Judge hits 37, 38 homers a year, knocks in 100 runs, plays outstanding defense, that's good enough.
Pags, what do you think? Do you think that a player, it doesn't have to be Judge, putting his money where his mouth is, as the saying goes, you know, as the talking point goes, and it's their walk year, do you think that that has anything to do with how they perform in the years after that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you always see that a player seems to elevate their game when they are playing for a contract, you know, and when that contract is signed, they are playing for their next contract. And that is, that goes up a hill, you know, that's, you start to, all right, you give them this much and then you start to give them a little bit more and a little bit more. And then by the time you're going to play for another contract again, you are doing the best that you can because you want to get signed for another somewhat years. And I think that has a lot to do with it. I think that money makes people less hungry. And if you're not hungry when you're playing in a professional sport, it becomes ho-hum. It becomes the job. It doesn't become what you love. And I think that's part of the difference, I think.
What do you think, Mac?
Well, I know Judge isn't the first to do this. I mean,
no, he's certainly not.
You look in football, and what was the island? Was it Revis Island, Jack, with the Jets? Yeah. I mean, he did the same thing. He made a boatload of money, betting on himself every year. He played with the Patriots, I think. He played with the Jets. So it's not the first time this has happened. I think he didn't want the long-term contracts. He didn't want to go that route. So it's not the first, and it probably won't be the last, guys. I don't know. I mean, the contract is different. Situation is different now, but I think that a lot of players like just playing for that 1 year for the money.
blame the owners for setting that mentality. I remember Chris Chambliss. I think it was after the 76 season. He signed a 5-year contract for a total, don't laugh, of $875,000 total. That comes out to about $175 a year, just doing quick math in my head. And he said he signed for less money than he could have gotten on a shorter deal because he wanted the security of a long-term deal. The players today, they want to get paid more money on a long-term deal. The world's gone crazy.
Yeah.
I think the best point was made by Pags because of the fact that he said once you have too much money, you sort of lose the fervor, the excitement, and all that. And the reason I love that quote is, as always, it ties back to Rocky III when Rocky became civilized, and he had the big house, and then he wasn't the champion anymore. So like Rocky III really defines sports. Anyway, let's go to this one. Who is the most famous owner in the history of team sports? What a great question. The most famous owner in the history of team sports.
You want me to start?
Sure.
I got one. I don't know whether you guys thought of it, and it's pretty easy to me. Papa Bear, George Halas.
Ooh, you got me.
Papa Bear, I got Mac on that one. I slipped one by Mac. Okay?
Well, I got the same one, Jack. Same one.
You got that? Oh, then
Yes.
you got it, Mac.
Let's hear Mac then. Talk
I
about
wanna hear
Papa.
Mac's viewpoint on that, because now I'm teaming up with Mac. Mac is truly old school. He's the most old school of all of us here.
Well, I mean, compared to today, of course, everybody compares football from yesterday to today. Totally different game. George Halas was not only the owner, he was the player, he was the manager. I mean, he did it all. The Monsters of the Midway, Papa Bear. Was it Papa Bear? No, that was
Papa Bear. They called him. Yeah.
Yes, Papa Bear. And I mean, today you could say Jerry Jones. You could say, if you want to go back with the Yankees, George Steinbrenner. But this, to me, is an unbelievable guy. He helped start football back in the 20s, and that's why I picked him for the most famous owner of all time.
I'm going to go with a different guy, and you're not going to like my answer because my initial answer was Branch Rickey, and he wasn't an owner. But what's interesting is I think a lot of people think he was the owner when he brought in Jackie Robinson to break the color barrier. He was the general manager. He didn't own the Dodgers, but I think a lot of people think he did, and so I think people think that he did a job that he didn't do, but that makes him very famous for what he did. If that makes any sense. I sort of sound like I'm Yogi Berra, but anyway.
Yeah, when I think of owners, I unfortunately can't go as old school as you guys. I would have to say, like, I think of, when I think of owners now, like who owns these teams, I think of infamous owners. I think of George Steinbrenner because he was the face of the Yankees, really, because he was always in the news other than any of his players. And then I think of Jerry Jones, who also, like when I went there and they were showing all of the guys who were in the Ring of Honor or got Hall of Fame in there, Jerry Jones's flag was a little bit taller and a little bit bigger than everybody else's because he had to pat himself on the back a lot more because he's done so much with the franchise. And I think that that's the problem right now is that owners that are more infamous than famous. So it's like you can think of Kraft and how he's won 6 Super Bowls. He's been to 10. Those are, I can think of Jeffrey Lurie, who's done great, but he's, again, it's, they're not end all be all. So I don't know. I think initially the first name that comes to my head when you asked that question was George Steinbrenner. And then next would be Jerry Jones. So yes, what you said, Mac, when you think about the new school, the new school is definitely much more than the old school in my regards.
Well, as far as perception goes, Doc, with Branch Rickey, there's one other person who basically did what Branch Rickey did, who I think would be more well-known a little more. That would be Red Auerbach, you know, at the Celtics. Now, I don't think he was a known at all, but if you match him with Branch Rickey was known exclusively for what he did with Jackie Robinson, even though he had a big body of work otherwise, you know, a very good body of work. But we link him 100% with Jackie Robinson, the great thing he did. But Red Auerbach, if you look at the big picture, what he did, and Bill Russell swore by Red Auerbach. He loved him. And Bill Russell, you know, he took on, you know, the establishment a lot, but Red Auerbach wasn't scared to make these bold moves.
Great points. Great people.
Yeah,
keep going.
Go ahead, Doc.
No,
I think you could
go.
also throw Paul Brown in. Okay. I think you could throw Paul Brown in there, bringing in Jimmy Brown and I think Freight Train, whatever his name was, he was the first black guy in the NFL back then. So I think Paul Brown you could put in there too.
If you guys had a choice, I'm going to throw a little audible. You had to work for one of these two owners. It could be an everyday job, not for the team, knowing their personality. They were your boss. You'd have to be in a constant communication with them. Who would you pick? George Steinbrenner or Charlie Finley?
I was thinking of Charlie Finley before as a famous owner who was as big as the sport for a while and who probably a lot of people don't even know about anymore. Like he faded away. Both guys were winners. They won lots of World Series. Finley, though, ran out of money and then sold off his teams. And Steinbrenner, to the end, was trying to win. Of course, he got suspended a few times along the way, too. You know what? I'd go with Steinbrenner because I'd want to be a Yankee.
I mean, you were like if you were an office worker. That's what.
Yeah, I'd rather work in the Yankee offices than the Oakland A's offices.
No. If you got up and yawned, you'd have a problem for 1 second. I'd go with George Steinbrenner because I think George, the other side of him, had a big heart.
Yeah,
Maybe
he did.
Charlie Finley did too. I don't know, but I know George Steinbrenner. The other 50% of him, you know, was fantastic. He would go out of his way. He would harass you. He would fire you. He would send you home upset. And then you'd get home and maybe a television set would be delivered to your house because he'd feel bad.
I'd go with Finley just because I would want to live in California at the time, and then you know he'd sell me off to another team, and then I could go to another team and see how that was. So that's
nice. Great answers. All right, so this one we're lucky we are all in different places because this is a question that could cause some ruckus among the elite people here at Mac and Jack Sports. The big debate question for the day, which could take us all the way through the next half hour. If not, we have a couple more in reserve. But which team has the worst fan base in all of sports? The worst fan base in all of sports. Which team? And it's interesting because like we have Jack's a big Jets fan. Some people say the Jets fans aren't great. Pags, of course, is the Philly sports guy. Some people say that the Philadelphia fans, especially in regard to the Phillies and the Eagles, aren't that great. People don't like the Yankee fans. In fact, I think Vlad Guerrero said I would never go play in New York. And there's questions about the Yankee fans booing, during the playoffs, saying that people don't want to come play for the Yankees. So it's interesting. We've got a lot of our favorite teams here that could be in the running for the most obnoxious fans or the worst fans. So I'm going to sit back and let you guys answer this one. Who's the worst fans in sports?
You know how I look at it, guys? I look at it, if a fan base is indifferent, those are the worst fans. The worst thing you could do to players is just not care. I mean, players like showing up to the stadium. They like playing the game. They like some type of reaction. Think of how boring World Series crowds are compared to years ago when your whole fan base could attend. Now it's corporate, this or that, even though it seemed pretty loud in Philly this year. With that said, I say the LA Ram fan base. They're terrible there. You watch an LA Ram game, you hear cheering for the other team. There was one game this year that was played in LA. I heard a lot of cheering, and I was under the impression the Rams were the visiting team till I realized they were the home team. And I go, like, what? You know, it's a terrible fan base. Even Jim Jeffcoat, who does the Sunday show with us, was saying, what a bad place to have to play, you know, when you don't have your fans behind you at all. So I say the LA Ram fan base.
Pags, you go around and visit a lot of teams and been in a lot of stadiums. What do you think?
I think LA in general, you take away the Lakers, and LA in general is non-existent of a fan base for their team. I think you can go to Miami and talk about really how Miami is, again, a wishy-washy fan base for their teams in general. I feel that, you know, when I start to think about it, like it's like I think of the Cowboy fan base and how they feel that it's always their year and such like that. But they are engaged on their team, and it doesn't matter how well the team is doing, they're engaged. And, you know, same thing with Pittsburgh, where Pittsburgh, if they're winning, if their team's winning, they got the best team in the world. If their team loses, they are quiet as church mice. You know what I mean? So you can't get anything. And then, you know, being in Houston for the World Series, it wasn't until he hit that monster home run in the 6th inning that they got any bit loud. In fact, that was when they started to get loud, because I thought it was a fairly quiet stadium. So, you know, I think about that and kind of what Jack said in terms of, you know, that again, it's, you know, a team that doesn't care, you know, or a fan base that doesn't care about their team shows, you know, a level of, you know, just like, okay, well, then it's, you know, that team. So, I mean, I think the Rams, like LA is the worst. LA is the worst about that. Short of the Lakers, they don't really show up for any of their teams except maybe soccer, which is ridiculous. But I guess that shows more for the, you know, the immigrant population there, because soccer is obviously a lot more of a worldwide sport than it is an American sport. And I got to imagine that in LA, there's a tremendous amount of immigrants that come there and play soccer and have done soccer, so soccer does really well. You know, I think of the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons can't sell out their stadium, but you put a soccer game in there and it's at full capacity. And those are things that I see and notice. You know, when I can go to Arizona and it sounds like that the Eagles are at home there and that the Cardinals got to go to a silent count in their own building, that shows me that Philadelphia fans, as hated as they are always there supporting their team through high or low. Doesn't matter. We're out there and we're doing it. And I think that's part of, you know, what has to go into that question.
What do you think, Mac?
Well, believe it or not, I think the Giants have the worst fans in the league.
And you're a Giants fan. It's interesting.
I know. And I you know, I think that the Giant fans, if they lose, they're complaining. If they win, they complain. You know, this is not good enough. We're not going to do that. We're not going to do that well this year. They really don't root for their players. They, you know, besides Saquon Barkley, you know, there are a lot of fake fans when it comes to the Giants. A lot of fake fans. I love the Eagle fans. The Eagle fans support their own. They really do. I mean, you can hate them all you want, but the Eagle fans are behind their players, even past players. Buffalo's got an outstanding fan base. I mean, you know, you go to Buffalo and the Bills Mafia, they're a little crazy in you know, pregame, but man, they support their team. So I'll take the Giants being the worst fan base in the NFL. And you know, Dallas is, as Pac said, they always support their team. Washington, I don't know about the Commanders, because I don't think they have an identity. So how can you be excited about the Commanders? But I'm going to stick with the Giants, guys.
Great stuff. All right, I think we have one last question. I always have a couple in reserve just in case, but we have one on the distinguished list provided to us by the distinguished Jack Hirsch. Here it is. Which baseball team do you think will make the biggest splash during the offseason?
I'm going to tell you, Doc, you and I on board with this. I was searching. And we talked before about Aaron Judge. That would make a major splash off the bat, whoever signed them. Okay, that's a big splash. But when push comes to shove, I've got to say the New York Mets. I think Steve Cohen wants to win this championship very badly. He had a plan when he took over as owner that we're going to win it somewhere in the next 3 to 5 years. And last year, as disappointing as it was to get bumped out of the playoffs, it was a step in the right direction. No one could argue that. They won 101 games, even though they folded at the end of the season, lost the division lead, and then got bumped out of the playoffs. It was a step in the right direction. And he's already started off this free agent period signing Edwin Diaz. He gave him a good offer that Edwin Diaz, if he turned it down, Edwin Diaz's people knew he couldn't do much better than what he was being offered by Steve Cohen. A record-setting deal for a reliever, $20 million a year for 5 years, a 6-year option that could go up to $22 million. It's a chance. But Edwin Diaz is what, 28 years old, I think, or so. So he's young enough to fulfill the terms of that deal. I can't imagine Steve Cohen standing pat. I think he's going to fire at least a couple of more missiles in this, big time. I mean, if he doesn't get Jacob deGrom, he's going to go after Justin Verlander. He's going to go after one of the two of them. If he doesn't go after Aaron Judge, who else is out there? That he's going to figure something out. We have a ton of high-level shortstops on the free agent market, but he has Francisco Lindor there. Might he move Lindor to second base? Might that work to sign one of these other guys? Or might he sign a Carlos Correa and move him to second base and move Lindor there? I mean, it's all possible. They're moving pieces, or move one of them to third base. I just see Steve Cohen is a quiet man's George Steinbrenner, at least for the next few years. He's going to do whatever it takes to get it done. There are other teams I could think of, but I don't think anyone's pushing past Steve Cohen this free agency period.
What do you think, Mac?
I think it's the Dodgers. The Dodgers have there's no option. I mean, money is no option to them. And they just keep bringing in the big names all the time. They're trying to get to the World Series. They really haven't yet. Sort of like the Yankees in a way, right? But as far as
they won it a couple of years ago, the Dodgers.
True. But anyway, I think the Dodgers will make a huge splash. Maybe they go after some of the big names that the Mets might go after. We'll see. And again, money's no option for the Dodgers, that's for sure.
Pags?
I'm going to go off the beaten path here and say that it's going to wind up being somebody like the Orioles. I think that the Orioles are going to wind up signing somebody worthwhile. And that being the case, like, it's going to change just the vision of what they are as a team. And I don't think for the Dodgers to make that type of splash, they need to sign like 3 or 4 guys. For the Orioles, they would only need to really sign one guy to make a big splash. Like, hey, now a small market team is starting to make a big jump here. And I think that they had enough of a good season last year that they're going to try to build upon that. And that means signing somebody who they wouldn't typically sign to try to get them above, to that next level. On the opposite side, I think Seattle could also be that same type of team where they're just trying to take that. It's only going to take that one guy, but because it's in a smaller market, that it's going to make such a big splash that the bigger teams like the Dodgers, the Yankees are going to have to start to spend more money to secure the guys they want to, because they're going to be afraid that the smaller markets are going to take the bounty of what's free agency.
Interesting. Jack knows that my choice was the Mets. I just think that Steve Cohen's going to do whatever it takes to spend whatever he needs to keep getting the big players in. I think it's also an interesting thing that if we had asked this question 10 years ago, the answer every year was the Yankees. And it's just this. I don't even think they're even in the consideration as far as a team that's going to make a big splash and go big for lots of big time players. But
and it's interesting that nobody mentioned Boston either.
Yeah,
Boston
because I don't
is
think
not a
they're-
small market team, but yet they need.
and they're playing that way lately. But how about the Phillies? There's some talk that the Phillies might be the team that Jacob deGrom goes to. Have you heard any of that down in Philadelphia?
I've been talking about that since on this show forever. That and Trey Turner.
Yeah.
That those two. That
could be the answer then. That could be the
DeGrom,
answer.
DeGrom has got a really good friendship with Wheeler. And Trey Turner being, coming from the Dodgers, I hear he wants to play in Philadelphia. I tell you, the playoffs this year got a lot of the attention of the free agents out there for the Phillies. The way that we supported our team in the playoffs. I mean, I was there obviously for the last game of the season, and we won. We had like 26,000 people there. And then the playoffs became here, and it was 46,000 people. That tickets were higher than they've ever been for any World Series, short of the Cubs, because everybody needed to see the Cubs because it was 100 years. But short of that, I mean, that the Phillies broke a lot of records this year in terms of the fastest amount of sold goods for 24 hours, and the amount of price on the tickets in general. And just, I mean, there was a lot to be said for that. And I think that opened the eyes of some free agents that said, hey, in Philadelphia, I think some players want to play for fans. They want the accolades of playing for the fans. And when you think about coming to Philadelphia here, you have to have a certain mentality because we know what it is that we're talking about. Everybody likes to think that we don't know and we run guys out of town. Truth of the matter is they run themselves out of town because they don't want to put in the time and effort that we want from our players. We want winners. We want guys that work really hard at their craft, and they have to prove it day in and day out. My motto in myself is I bring it every play of every game all day, and that's what we want from our players. We want to see them succeed, but they have to be able to put in the work to do it. And if they're working hard and not succeeding, we are okay with that because we know that they will get better because they're putting in the time, and you have nowhere to go except up.
Let me just, were you going to say something, Matt?
Yeah, I was going to say, talk about a team with a loyal fan base. You'd have to throw the Knicks in there. I mean, they haven't had a championship since the early 70s, and yet they still sell out. Yet they're still getting unbelievable prices for their tickets. Nolan, I mean, Jack defends him somewhat, but he really hasn't helped the team out that much. Yeah, Dolan, I mean, he's made some really bad decisions with GMs. But the Knicks fans are always there. They're always supporting their team.
Yeah, no, definitely. No, but getting back with the free agents and teams in baseball who might make the biggest splash, you got to look at the history. Pax, I don't understand you mentioning the Orioles. It's a bold move. I give you credit. But look at the history. They let Trey Mancini go this year. So if they were looking to make a splash to sign players, they wouldn't have let him go to Houston. Manny Machado, like 3 years back. They wouldn't sign him. He was like a homegrown Oriole. So I can't see them coming up with the money. Now, Max picked the Dodgers, of course, are going to be in the mix. But I also have a theory. If a team has been burned by contracts, they're going to be a little less hesitant. And the Dodgers with Trevor Bauer, they got burned with that. It was only a 3-year deal, but, at over $40 million a year. Might they be reluctant? I don't know. With the Red Sox, you mentioned them, Pax, Bogarts. They're not looking to give him this crazy 10-year deal. Kudos to the Red Sox for that. But if they're willing to let maybe their most popular player go, I mean, it kind of tells you a little something. And, we just don't know. No one mentioned the Giants. They've been linked to Judge. And the Giants claim they have the money for competitive offer. You know what I think is going to be revealing to see? Anthony Rizzo. He's the type of player that would have any team win. Is any team looking to make a splash? Sign Rizzo to a 3-year deal. That's what he's looking for. Give him $18 million a year, and you can have Rizzo probably. $55 million for 3 years. You could sign Anthony Rizzo, I think, right now. That's my feeling. That's making a splash. Justin Verlander. That's making a splash. We're looking at the names kind of like at the top. We're looking Judge and DeGrom. I guess Verlander's a name at the top. But all these shortstops and the Texas Rangers, I mean, they've shown that they're going to spend crazy money, and they've been linked to Jacob DeGrom. Might they be willing to really give him like a 5-year deal, like $43 million a year, take a chance, with his injury history? I don't know. What's a safer bet, guys? Over 3 years, the next 3 years, Verlander or DeGrom? Who's a safer bet to sign for 3 years?
I kind of think Verlander. DeGrom just always seems to be hurt. It's frustrating. But I would, if I were a team, I'd consider signing Verlander. I'd stay far away from Jacob DeGrom.
DeGrom's younger, though.
I know.
Verlander might get a wall. You're figuring 2 years, like on the 3rd year. If DeGrom is healthy, he should give you an excellent 3 years if he's healthy.
That's always the big question. We have 10 minutes left here. So let me just present a question out of the blue. I saw this one, actually talked about it with EJ on the Start Spreading the News show on Monday nights, which comes at 9. The great show Gloved Fist comes on at 7. That's hosted, of course, by our very own Jack Hirsch. What would you rather be? I want you to think about the question, and then each of you can give your answer. Would you rather be the superstar player who has the tarnished reputation? Say somebody like a Barry Bonds or a Roger Clemens or a Pete Rose, right? Like, you were great, no doubt about it, Hall of Famer, but you're not in the Hall of Fame because something happened along the way to tarnish your reputation. Or would you rather be the good ball player who's basically forgotten? Think of a guy like Larry Bowa, who played great shortstop for the Phillies. Nobody remembers Larry Bowa. What would you rather be? The guy who had a nice career and was pretty good for a long time? Or would you rather be the great player who has the tarnished legacy?
That's easy for me.
All right.
I would rather be the great player with the tarnished legacy.
Of course you would.
This world is out of whack with morality and this and that. And listen, the guys with the tarnished legacy are the highest profile guys. A-Rod has his job with Fox, ESPN. Clemens is coming on there as the guest. I mean, to me, it's the tarnished legacy. I will say this, some guys' legacy gets tarnished and they can't come back depending on personality. It's hard, like a Rafael Palmeiro, a Sammy Sosa. But, a guy like Pete Rose, Pags reveres him. Pags doesn't care his legacy, with the sports betting. Pags loves Pete Rose. He's a megastar to Pags compared to Larry Bowa. So there's your answer.
Because that came right from my lips. That's right.
Well, it's the truth, isn't it, though?
No, it's not. I think the reason why he won't get in there is because he's an ass. You know what I mean? And he can't he can't shut his mouth is the problem. You know what I mean? And that's when you put him on a ball field, back in the day, he was great. But he's just an ass now. And I don't necessarily need to support him. I feel like that he will be better served in the Hall of Fame posthumously. But, guys like that live forever. Rotten ones live forever because, you can watch the apple just go rotten and rotten and rotten and nobody will ever touch it in the basket. So it's literally, I think that he could live to 110 years old and still not make it into the Hall of Fame until he's dead.
All right. Listen, guys, I'd rather be the nice player with a good career, right? I know Doc's going to agree with this because he's a nice guy. Listen, I mean, you still got to get up in the morning and look at yourself in the mirror. You want your family to be proud of you. You don't want to be a jerk that that your friends don't like you anymore and your family disowns you. I mean, I mean, I'm not going to make all that money.
Question, Mac. That's not the question. Family liking your morality. No, I agree on that count.
All right.
I'm talking about status as an athlete.
I understand, but I think it all comes together in one, Jack. I mean, I think it's all part of being that person. So, I mean, I'm not going to make all that money. I don't need $100 million for the rest of my life. I can even continue working if I want. So I'd rather be that nice player any day, and the heck with that, the superstars. Doc.
Yeah, I agree with Mac. I mean, I'd love to be a superstar, but given the choice between being a superstar with a tarnished legacy or an average Joe with stellar reputation, I'd always go with the stellar reputation. I'd rather be, I guess, forgotten, except for the people who are looking back at the sport and saying, hey, he was a good ball player and a heck of a good guy. I want to be able to look my kids in the eye and my wife in the eye and my family and my friends and say, I gave it.
That's another issue. I agree with you guys on that issue.
Right. But if I were a player who had the tarnished legacy because I cheated, hey, Dad, you ran a 2-hour marathon. I know, but I did steroids so I could do it.
I'm going to give you an example, Doc. I'm going to give you an example. Let's say you arranged a trip with some Yankee fans. You were in charge to meet some Yankee legends, and in walked the room together Andy Pettitte and Roger Clemens. Roger Clemens would have the bigger buzz with the fans. They would go over to him a little more. That's Roger Clemens. That's what I mean.
Correct, but he has to live his whole life with the question of, did you cheat? And so does Andy Pettitte. I'd rather not cheat and not be great and be the best I could be.
I agree with you on that count. I'm just saying at the end of the day, rep, how you looked at sports. They don't look at these guys. Listen, Clemens isn't looked at. When they look at him, you think more great legendary pitcher than you think steroid thing. That's at least the way I think about it.
I think that's the first thing that comes into your mind when you talk about Roger Clemens is he got, a lot of those wins because he was on steroids. He was so good in his later years because of those steroids. I think that's the first thing that enters your mind.
I think you look at guys like A-Rod too. I think you look at him more like great player. And listen, what could I say? It's the type of question. If morality comes in and it's a humiliation, if I'm looked at as being a cheat at all, but I got more status, I would rather just be the good guy and not looked at as the cheat. If there are other factors that you guys mentioned involved.
I knew Jack would come around. I knew Jack would come around eventually, Doc. I knew he would.
Yeah, of course. Absolutely. All right, you know what? That brings us to the top of the hour. We've done 2 hours of great sports talk. The 4 most brilliant minds in the history of sports talk, and all good people at the same time. So our reputations all stay clean. Hey, stay tuned tomorrow. Tomorrow's the big football show. And then throughout the week, there's so many great programs. This has been the Mac, Jack, Doc, and Philly Sports Guy debate show. Have a great Saturday, everybody. And we'll see you right back here next Saturday at 8 a.m.
Take care, folks.
In time.